some of the other groups when we don't have resources and we can't get the message out with nonprofit partners, people that know that the tools are available and there's open access and risks for spread. So this is a good example of the invasion curve. We initially heard about this at a conference in Canada, and they really use it to ground their economic approach in prevention. If you can see over in this corner here, this is when a species is entered. For every dollar you spend on prevention, you have $100 in return in the management. And again, an ounce prevention is worth a pound of cure, and in real economic sense, it's 1 to 100. So this is something we like to discuss and talk about as it relates to public-private and nonprofit partnerships, because we all have a lot to lose in this, and we're all going to have to spend a lot of money as these issues scale up and across the country. So what's happening at a boat launch? Right now, folks are told clean, play, go, or clean, drain, dry. They plan to act, and they don't act. And we're really trying to tease out the questions as to why this is occurring. And some of the most important things that we've been looking into is the behavior changes behind that. And I wanted to sense of why these things don't occur. A good example is the marketing piece. You tell people to do something, you broadcast the message everywhere. A good example is this Trapper Keeper, which actually was my Trapper Keeper when I was a kid. It's a sweet looking Ferrari, but guess what? The first car that I purchased was not a Ferrari. It was an old Buick. Despite the great marketing we had and me seeing that Ferrari as my Trapper Keeper for many years, all the cool kids were apparently doing it. There's barriers to entry, and that's, in this instance, is cost and feasibility, because I live in Minnesota and a Ferrari just doesn't cut it. So outreach does have its limits, and that's a barrier to action. Another example is CFL light bulbs. When CFL light bulbs came out, so there's mercury in them, and they really wanted folks to actually have them properly recycled instead of throwing them in the trash. What occurred was counties and cities began to provide services for recycling, specifically CFL light bulbs, across the country. But the timing for them was not convenient. It was open from 10 to 2 on a Tuesday and Thursday. So what happened was with CFL light bulbs, there was a very low recycling rate. And I don't know if anybody else listening has done this before, where I kept them in the box and I had them ready to go and had full intention of actually recycling them. But when I was Marie Kondoing my house or just cleaning up in the springtime, I ended up tossing them out in the trash because I couldn't find the time to bring it to the proper recycling location. So again, it wasn't convenient, and there was barriers to action. So the folks at the Canadian Council on Invasive Species have done some great research with Ken Donnelly, and they surveyed the public and they asked, well, why can't you do this? What are your barriers to action as an angling and boating community? And this word cloud is a great example of the feedback that the Canadians had, but in our experience really echoes across the country. Time really sticks out, equipment to do so, the watercraft and understanding it is another piece of it. So again, this is something we took to heart on understanding as a barrier to action, that we need to empower the public to take the actions themselves. The unicorn, the mythical beast, this is what we began chasing. What are those barriers to action, those tools? How do we make it happen? So again, we began looking at this from the lens of the private, the public, and the nonprofit partnerships. And what are our roles in this? And how can we work together to find that unicorn? So the keys to success that we kind of laid out at the beginning of this was understanding our lanes and how they cross over and how we can work together. Public institutions have great resources on science and research outreach and education, really great cues for participation. Again, typically in this instance at boat launches, the public owns that parcel. So they have the ability to message at that location and control their interests related to either fishing licenses or boat licenses as well. The private industry, in this instance is us, we really tried to listen and provide feedback loops to understand how we can make things better and empower the public better. The nonprofit groups, such as NASMA and other lake associations across the country and other advocacy groups. It's really amazing the work that they've done as a bridge builder and outreach and education and advocacy group. Again, those are just really important pieces that stir the pot together. So we looked at it from the lens of how we can put these pieces together. Another way to look at it is the action and public benefit access. Again, that mythical beast, the unicorn, really is this Venn diagram middle. It's the most effective scientific solution for the prevention of aquatic invasive species. It's actually, the public will take the actions, the boating public will take the actions out of their own self-interest. And at the same time, the government infrastructure it's valuable, and it has a return on investment that relates to actualization, real things that are occurring on the ground that's preventing the spread out of other lakes. And I'll be coming back to the slide and addressing it, and I hope you've got some questions related to this as well. So we created CD3 in an intention to try to connect the dots, to be a resource to find that unicorn. Stands for Clean, Drain, Dry, Dispose. We're B Corp, so we empower the people to prevent the spread of invasive species and safeguard local economies and the natural environment. So our nonprofit partner for our pilot program was Wildlife Forever. They do a fantastic job of implementation of the Clean, Drain, Dry message, where we started this in Minnesota. They have great market penetration. They've got them on billboards. It's a message that's in the handouts for the fishing instructions. It's language that's used across the power boaters, the pleasure boaters, and also in the angling community. It can be Clean Plan Go. It can be a number of other messages that are out there state by state. Again, that brand and message is really paramount to having something in front of the public so they can see what they need to do, plain and simple. In this pilot, we pursued a number of other grants, and we're very fortunate to receive them. One of which was the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment from the state of Minnesota. These are dollars that come through the lottery funds. We had the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation provide a grant for development and scalability across the country. We had paying partners that really said, hey, we want to try this out and put it in at our boat launch. These include Three Rivers Park District, St. Louis County, Hennepin County, and the city of Eden Prairie, which is a metro city. And the public support. We had some great technical advising from the Minnesota DNR. They're really thorough in addressing how this relates to legal precedents in the state. We had feedback from Texas Park and Wildlife. Sea Grant folks were fantastic to work with, and Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for some of the other manufacturing components of it. So we sought to build that this cohort and together try to make this technology better. So when we created this pilot, we said, all right, we want to target 5 locations in Minnesota and empower day boaters with the tools to clean, drain, dry. Again, day boaters are a different breed, and in Minnesota, there's about 900,000 registered watercraft. 60% of those go to more than one lake. So you got 500,000 boats driving around Minnesota. And those boats, we hope, are understanding the message of clean, drain, dry, and they're going to different types of lakes, at different lake access types, big and small. We're going to have people clean in and clean out, and we want to cover urban to rural landscape, which in this instance covers oligotrophic to eutrophic lakes. So this way we cover a spectrum of species that are aquatic. And again, the common denominator is water. So clean, drain, dry, dispose. It's removal of all water and plants and animals. And if they are encrusted with zebra mussels, they do need to go to a high pressure, high heated decon station. So the cleaning stations that we had developed were equipment installed at a boat launch. They're about 9 feet tall, 8 feet wide. They have hand tools that are tethered, air on the left-hand side, right here, and wet dry vacuum on the right. Instructions on the front on use. The wet dry vacuum comes on and stays on for 2 minutes and then turns off. The air blower, you press the button, comes on, you use it, and it turns off in 2 minutes. The hand tools are tethered. You have 50 feet of coated stainless steel cable, and then lights on the top. to illuminate into the watercraft, and lights on the bottom to illuminate under the watercraft. We found in our research that the public in Minnesota in particular, the average boat owner is 55 years of age or older, which makes it difficult for you to get under your boat and see all those different things and actually grab them. One thing we also developed were different power options, and at the same time, all the equipment is internet connected. Internet connectivity is an important piece because it provides a feedback loop to show our public agencies that the equipment is being used. It provides status updates on the tank level, the wet dry vacuum tank. It provides alerts if a tool is not being used and is not active, so you can go fix it. It provides counts, and this is a great way that our nonprofit partner in this, Wildlife Forever, was able to do press releases with some of the other agencies to say, hey, over 4th of July week, we had 6,000 uses of the equipment. And they broke down in this fashion for these different types of tools. So again, this is a way to show accountability to the public and empower them with data and find out if things are working or not. The analytics were really helpful. We really could identify when things are being used and how and why. Again, with different species, they have different blooming times and different ecological cycles where there's more of them present or there's a higher propensity of them to be on your boat launch based upon the type of lake. So it's really helpful in our review and discussion with the site managers. Again, you pump the equipment out with a regular porta-john company to remove the water, and the people interact with the equipment and learn the message of clean, drain, dry in this particular instance and take the actions to do so at a boat launch. We also created a stopas.com public portal so folks could walk through. Once you log on to it, you can walk through and select your boat type, and then it provides the instructions on how to use the equipment. So beyond the exterior of the equipment being a educational kiosk, this also acts as a digital kiosk to engage the public. So this is something we really worked hard to provide the means upon which people can meet the best management practice per site. And since we've polished it a bit more afterwards. So to rip through the sites quickly, Bryant Lake was a suburban lake. It was a site that was owned by a government agency called Three Rivers Park District. This is heavily used by the public and has hours of operation and a number of different community events occurring at it. And the equipment is located here, boat launch on the side. So boaters were redirected via pavement markers and a stop with a stop strip. At Bryant Lake, over the 2-year pilot, we had over 8,000 uses, and the primary tool use was the grabber. In this particular site, it did have milfoil present. They did find some zebra mussels, but they haven't been able to really latch on in this lake yet. So the grabber was used a lot to remove weeds, and then the brush, and then the air, and then the wrench, the plug wrench in this particular instance, to remove your plug on your boat. Pike Lake is up near Duluth, Minnesota. It's quite rural. In this particular site, we tried to clean on the way in and on the way out. This site provided some really interesting learning for us because, as you can see, the distance from the actual boat launch to where the CD3 system was quite far, about 400 feet as a matter of fact. And from this location, we were able to determine that people aren't as likely to use this if they're not within 200 feet. This is also some good feedback from the township and some of the folks and inspectors present on the site that were observing anglers and the public boating use of the equipment. Again, Pike Lake was lower performing, but the vacuum was used quite a bit on this site, and air blower was close behind that. Spring Park Bay is on Lake Minnetonka. Lake Minnetonka is a very large lake east of the Twin Cities Metro. It's the variable cesspool of AIS. In this particular boat launch, it's a tight boat launch. As you can see on the bottom here, it's got lots of pavement markers, and we were able to peel boats off and bring them up to the top to use the CD3 system. Spring Park Bay, we also piloted our first solar technologies with it, and on this particular location, the brush was used the highest by far. And again, with this site, over 2 years, one of the more interesting things about it was there's a lot of bass anglers that put in and out just for day use, and they wanted to scrub and clean their boats, scrub the debris off their bunks and also along the side of their watercraft. The grabber was also used quite a bit in this particular location. Lake Riley was a new construction site, our Cadillac site. It truly is a public boat launch and kind of exurban fringe in the Twin City Metro. You can see that there's some great delineation using SOBA, States Outdoor Boating Access design standards for delineation of where you can have a clean out area. We're actually pursuing potentially another location close to the lake. Lake Riley had tons of use, tons of great just practices by the folks that are coming out. So we just pull up and do the AIS prevention by hand and at the location by the CD3. And really good feedback from a lot of day boaters on this particular lake. This site had lots of use with the grabber and brush, plug wrench, and air buttons. Again, over 8,000 uses over 2 years. And we got this in very late in the season in 2017. So most of those uses were in 2018. North Arm was another site on Lake Minnetonka. Lake Minnetonka, this site is a pretty big boat launch. There's a decon present at this one, periodically inspectors. This location also had a dumpster area and spot for dumping your baits. We only got 1 year of data out of this because we had some contracting issues and with the electrical hookup. The grabber was used the highest in this particular location because there was lots of floating debris. And if the wind was right, it'd push all the weeds into a corner right where the boat launch was. So the grabber was used quite high. So total uses, we had 28,000 uses of the equipment. Again, that Bryant Lake site was one of the, was really high, and we really used that insight again from understanding. All right, we've got lots of uses of this. Is it the most effective scientific solution for the different species? We went back to the drawing board and said, is there better tools we can get? Will boaters take actions if provide the tools? We found out they will, but how much? And will the government provide? Is this a cost benefit for the public, for the government agencies? So we asked our partners to provide third-party research, and Hennepin County started in 2016 when we were just initially developing the technology to observe before the equipment was present what boater behavior was without inspectors there. Three Rivers Park District, they had over 500 hours of observation. Hold on, let me back up. The Hennepin County research was done via like a secret shopper approach. So you wouldn't know. It would be somebody reading a book on a bench. It didn't look like an inspector, just observing people and what they did. Three Rivers Park District was observation with people that were sitting in a lawn chair watching you. So that was an interesting piece there. So it's just kind of different optics and understanding, what you're doing, what you're not doing if you're the public. And then MACERC, Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, did an analysis on the effectiveness of the vacuum for removing residual water for different boat types. So here's some of the pieces that we really found. C3 systems were helpful. People found them very much helpful for removal of vegetation. We also found them helpful for disposing of bait and drying a boat and trailer. Some things we probably got to work on is draining from boats and also remove vegetation. We've since been able to find out some of the feedback from those folks that had poor marks on that, in particular because they wanted higher removal in large volume situations. Ease of use, basically everyone thought it was pretty easy. The difficulties, they were upset that it sucked up their plug. Well, overall, we found that people liked the equipment and it was easy to use. They said that they were likely to use it again, which was really encouraging for us. Because again, it's one thing to force the public to do it, but how do you empower them to do it again? And this was something that we found really interesting, that people like a clean boat. A clean boat's a happy boat. And if we're giving the people the tools to take those actions themselves, it's in their own self-interest. And we've been able to leverage this in a lot of discussions with different states, because different states have different general people. I guess people have their own reasons for doing their actions, but if you can tie it into your own programming messages and also understand the psychology of boaters as a whole in your state, and just empower them to clean their boat, because that is a common denominator. It's likely that they will want to do it again. Violation rates. A couple big pieces we saw. Again, these numbers looking at a couple sites where they did observations year one. Prior to equipment being present, it was about 20% of boats had some kind of violation, whether it's weeds on their axle, on their boat, or they didn't remove their plug. By year two, we had a 70% reduction on some sites of violation rates. So this is when inspectors are not present. This is when you don't have people there or decon station. We're seeing a 70% reduction in violation rates, and this was done by the Secret Shopper group, Hennepin County, just observing the public and what they're doing. So again, this is something from public use. People just want to do it, and it's moving the needle. Residual water removal, we had 100% removed from live wells. And then from village areas, and this is a study done by the public using the equipment without instruction, we had over 80% reduction on average from the different boat types, 3 different boat types, a fishing boat, a bigger fishing boat, and then a cruiser boat. So this is an interesting study to see how much was left over in the village, because it is a hard to reach place. This is indicated we have to have different tips on our vacuum. But the good news is there's some new research that's found in under normal conditions, villagers have a high mortality rate by about day 2. I'm happy to share some great research done by some folks in Minnesota on that. Some key takeaways: you've got to be close. You got to be within 200 feet of the launch, otherwise the public won't take the actions. Definitely seeing the violations rates reduced. The automatic metrics and maintenance alerts were helpful. They're really helpful for the public to understand its utility and see that people are taking the actions with public infrastructure. Tool use varies by site, and that was kind of an assumption from the beginning. We thought that was going to happen, but it was fascinating to see different lake types have different tool usages. We had low operation and maintenance costs, about $1,000 a year. We had no vandalism or theft on these sites. We had people try to take the tools, but because it's braided stainless steel, you can't cut it with a Leatherman. And the tool to cut the braided stainless steel costs more than the cleaning tool itself. Super high public approval and usefulness, and the public will use it again. That was a really interesting piece of this science of compliance. Again, we're trying to get people to clean, drain, dry, dispose, clean, play, go. They plan to act, and we're hopeful that people will use a CD3 system to be compliant with the local laws and be just helpful at the end of the day. We're doing future research with other, using this mythical approach of chasing the unicorn with other groups. We really want to have third-party biological efficacy from institutions and state agencies. We're doing some check-in, check-out, custom digital programs, and we're also now installing across North America. So again, going back to the slide of the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, we really want to continue to do this in every state and region that we get into. It's important that we work with the public agencies to understand their goals, what does success look like, help develop resources as a private agency that really can provide the means to their ends. And also nonprofit groups leverage the message, the exterior kiosk, educational kiosk of the equipment to tell the story. A lot of the equipment we're putting in now, we have a blank slate for them to put whatever local groups you have associated with that water body on the exterior of it. It's important that the public knows it's there for them by their local community, not necessarily CD3. It's from the public. It's from the Lake Association, from the Angling Club, from the Tourism Board, from whatever Chamber of Commerce, whatever groups have integrity in your community. It's important that they participate in this and get data that shows its utility, because we know that AIS can really screw up local economies if fishing declines, if you can't recreate the same way at a water body. we'll have a bunch of spots across the country, hopefully trying out some more of our nonprofit, public, and private approaches. We've been empowering public to take action. There's some nice shots of folks doing it themselves and figuring out how to use the equipment. It was fun to be out there myself and just observe how folks use it. Again, in the public space, we weren't sure how it would be received, but at the end of the day, people thought the message was clear and figured it out pretty quickly. We've got a couple different options now. Put them on wheels, put solar panels on them. We've made smaller units for trailheads and tighter stream access areas. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Belle, and I'd love to field questions and have a discussion about this.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark, so much for this great presentation. Yeah, I'll scroll over to my question tab and run down. And as we start to address questions, if anyone thinks of anything, in your control panel there's a questions tab, and you can go ahead and type questions there, and we'll see if hopefully we can get every question answered. Okay, so first question, I think you actually addressed. I think the question was written before you addressed this. What kind of levels of vandalism are you used to on these units, if any? You were talking about your pilot programs, but I wondered if you have had any comments from your partners about vandalism?
Yeah, we actually had our first theft of a solar panel this past winter on a unit up in the Duluth area. And frankly, it's helped us make the product better because when we were designing it, we didn't think someone would sneak with a long needle nose pliers and pull off this panel, and they did. So we've now incorporated theft prevention for the solar panels on it and the lights on the top. But with our pilot, we didn't have any theft. But with this new model type, we did have our first occurrence. There hasn't been a lot of vandalism as a whole. If they are etched or spray painted, the exterior wraps are pretty cheap to redo. It's powder coated aluminum, so it's built to be out in the field and ruggedized, so it can take a licking and keep on ticking. So we haven't had a lot of vandalism in brief.
Great, thanks, Mark. Question from Kathy Raper. I'm unable to listen to the audio portion of this presentation. Can I ask what one of these units would cost?
Sure. The biggest piece in particular is the site and do you have power and what species are you targeting. The larger units are about $30,000 all in. We have lease to own options if you're a state agency, but then the smaller units, the outpost is about 10 to 12. The precast with wayside and outpost units, as you see here, they come on precast concrete bases. So literally they show up and you can place them on level surface and they're operational day one. Year two, you're going to have software costs and equipment, tool replacement costs, and pump out if it does have a vacuum. And that's about $1,000 to $1,200 of annual operation and maintenance, year two and on. It's about a 10+ year product. It's a 4G network as far as the connectivity with the internet software platform. We've got coverage across the US because it's a special frequency that's like your OnStar access for your vehicle. So it's a special machine-to-machine frequency than FaceTiming with your aunt in Vermont or trying to send large amounts of data. Did I answer that one, Belle, I think?
Yeah, I think so. If there's any follow-up questions, again, everyone, please go ahead and type those in that question dialog box and we'll answer them. Okay, the next question is, I see that this webinar is being recorded. Will a link be provided to be able to watch another time? This webinar is available. The recording is available to either NASMA, North American Invasive Species Management Association members, or Play Clean Go partners. So if your organization or yourself is either one of those in the password protected area of the Play Clean Go graphic and media library and the NASMA membership portal, that is available to you. So if you're not a member or a partner, sign up. Next question from Sam Beck Anderson. Have you published any of your data findings anywhere? Would be useful to reference.
Yes, happy to share those. They're on our blog too. We push a lot of those through there. You can download a lot of the information on our website. It's under tech, I believe. So yeah, dig around our website. You should be able to find a bunch of our resources because we want the public to see this and review the data.
Great. Excellent. Let's see, I think that is the last question I have. I actually had a question, Mark. It was surprising to me to see that the brush and some of the other tools were, I guess, more commonly used than I guess I would have assumed that the vacuum or some of the other elements would have been used. Was that surprising to you to see that things like the brush or the grabber tool were of the highest use?
Well, in all honesty, there's a little bit of a deck stacked in Minnesota. There is laws in the books that's been out there for a few years of plug law. And if you do have vegetation on your watercraft, you can get a ticket. So the grabber, the hand tools on the middle of the unit were used almost the most in nearly every single one. Because they know how to use them and they understand the application. The wet dry vacuum, sometimes folks maybe didn't have enough time to do it or just didn't understand the value of it until they tried it and they're like, wow, this is a really useful tool. And that's what some folks said. We had a lot of naysayers on the use of air to do removal, but I had a lot of awesome feedback from folks that were commercial launching businesses that have like marinas. And the guy said to me, he goes, I thought this thing was a waste of public money at the beginning of it. But then by the end of the year, when I saw him again, he goes, that air blower is really useful to get all those bits and pieces of milfoil off my trailer. So I think there's new things out there, and people, I think, initially just use something that they know how to use. You just reach for what you understand first.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, we have another question from Robert Torres. Do you charge the public to use the equipment?
No, we don't have cameras and we don't charge the public. That's been something where when we developed this and did our focus groups, we don't want to be Big Brother. We want to be Fun Uncle. And you're going to get higher use if you make it free. And as part of our goal as a business, we really want to prevent the spread and cut down the hurdles in front of people. What groups are doing, I can tell you on the cost piece of it, is they are raising their launch prices. So let's just say your launch price last year was $5 to launch your boat. They're saying it's $10 this year, and if you CD3, it's still $5. So they're using economics as an incentive for people to take the actions of clean, play, go, clean, drain, dry, whatever it is. They're using it as a proverbial carrot and stick here. But no, we haven't charged for use. That's not the model here. It's public. And when we're working with a lot of the federal agencies and state agencies, open and clear access is an important piece of the puzzle so the public can use the water bodies. A great question.
Absolutely, great question. Next question is from Abigail Peterson. What is the strategy for the placement of the device? How do you choose which water bodies and what would be most effective?
So, excellent question. To recall the invasion curve, we want to contain things as soon as we can regionally or by watershed. I would encourage you to work with your water management group to understand that first and foremost. The placement of these can be both for clean on the way in and on the way out. However, depending upon your lake and the species that are present and the prevalence of those said species, you would want to target the water bodies that have AIS of concern. And some, just to put it in context, in some Midwestern states, curly leaf pondweed they think the battle's kind of lost on that. It's something that's kind of like a Canadian thistle. It booms and then it goes away. But it's so prevalent that it's difficult to spread. Now, with that said, it's still an aquatic vegetation that can be wrapped around your proverbial axle. So they want to target as a whole policy to prevent the spread of aquatic vegetation. But milfoil, Hydrilla, starry stoneware, this is an excellent first line of defense to circle the wagons around those lakes that are infested. To empower people to take 24/7 actions with CD3 systems on the way out of those lakes, because you know that's where it's coming from. Humans are the vector of spread. We've got other resources on our website, good research done by Concordia Moorhead, where they've done analysis on lakes that they found that waterfowl do not spread milfoil, contrary to public belief on that. So I would encourage you to put these on water bodies and watersheds that are infested to prevent the movement out of it, and have inspection on the way in. In particular, making sure folks understand the local laws and jurisdictional authorities. As far as placement at the boat launch, this is where I work with a lot of our customers as a put on my landscape architect hat and experience and understanding public use as a boater myself on where you can place these to really change behavior. It's amazing if you have an asphalt site. You can use pavement markers or just signs along the side of the road to cue people's interests up for cleaning on the way in. I mentioned briefly that economic incentive for charging if you enter, and then not charging as much if you take the actions of clean, drain, dry, dispose. But also on the way out, put it in a place within 200 feet of the boat launch, because we saw with our Pike Lake location, you get lower use the further you are out from the boat launch, just by nature of accessibility. So we've designed the equipment so they can be shoehorned into corners, be in spots where there's no access to power, as long as there's sun. We've made the trailer unit so they can be on a cross slope and side slope, so you can really place these in a spot that's really functional and allows people to go about their merry way at a boat launch, because as everyone listening knows, boat launches get intense, very intense. I swear I've seen a divorce happen at a boat launch before because people can't get in and out. But yes, we are asking people to do more. On average, boaters will take 3 to 7 minutes to clean, drain, dry, dispose. That's about the same amount of time people take already to put their life jackets away, to tidy up their rods or secure their load on their trailer. So put it in a spot nearby and have the call outs for people to do so. And if they can do it more quickly than another group, they can skip around them and go down the road. Great question, though.
Awesome. Great question. Next question is from Prabir Roy. What is the option to get the recorded presentation for non-member like Canada? We do have many members from Canadian provinces and local Canadian towns. So why don't we discuss offline if you're having challenges becoming a partner, and we'll figure out a way to help you out. From Megan Ryder, question, are there demo videos for the public to watch?
Of the equipment, yeah, we've got a whole YouTube page that shows how to CD3 fishing boat, pontoon, power boat. If you YouTube, I can send some links out afterwards, Belle, to our YouTube page and other resources. They're also embedded in our website. If you click on the different types of boats or types of CD3 systems, you can find a way at cd3station.com. If you find a way through that, there's some videos about the different technologies that show the use of it. Again, it's all waterless. So one of the pieces on demonstration of this is everyone asks, where's the water? And our common response is, well, water is the enemy. Water is the vector, and that keeps these things alive. So we want to remove all water. So a lot of the videos show how to remove vegetation and water.
Right. And I think I want to do a little plug here, kind of related to this question, Mark, if it's okay. CD3 has sponsored a video, a sort of infomercial sort of animated video that Play Clean Go developed to show the public how they can clean their gear. And so there's a great little animated clip that shows an animated person cleaning. I believe we have him cleaning an ATV and then something else, and a boat. So if you are not already a follower of Play Clean Go on Facebook or Instagram, get on there and look for this video. I think it's going to come out next week. And even after that, it will be available to partners to use and share on your own social pages. So the goal is that this is a tool, a visual outreach and awareness tool that folks can use on social media and on your websites to show exactly how to use it. And so just a related plug to that question. I hope that's okay, Mark.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Another piece that's tied to that too is we've used state of Utah's self-certification, self-decontamination for folks to check in and check out. So if you want people to do the right thing and you want to provide the means to do it, how do you have some kind of assurance that they're actually doing it? There's a couple of groups we're working with to develop those resources and have people check in their watercraft at that boat launch site with the CD3 system. So happy to talk about that with folks if interested as well, that have different laws on the books that require self-decontamination or decontamination as it relates to their local state jurisdictional policies. So.
Excellent. Great. Looks like the last question we have is from Marina Disbro. What is the likelihood of, for example, milfoil pieces that are either blown off or picked off returning into the body of water or drains?
So if it's on the way in, one of the biggest pieces that we had in our legal research was that question. How do we ensure that we're doing the due diligence to remove? At a boat launch, typically sloping towards a water body. In the state of Minnesota and a couple other states, you have to be 300 linear feet away from a water body if you use water for prevention practices of decontamination, your high pressure, high heated decon system, or have a means to contain that water for removal. So we don't use water with our equipment. So you're blowing it off, it falls onto the ground. Milfoil is fairly delicate in an area as long as it's not raining, like a heavy downpour. So there is a chance at the end of the day if they're cleaning on the way in, but on the way out, we're hopeful that the site has proper drainage so it goes into some kind of a bioswale where that species will desiccate and dry out. Because as you know, milfoil needs to be in standing water, and as long as it gets into an area that it can desiccate or degrade, it'll die. So I hope I answered that question to the best of my scientific ability, but there's still a chance at the end of the day. But if you can do the due diligence to remove it all, and on a site that has a ton of milfoil, have someone there to clean it up periodically, that'll be helpful.
Excellent. Great question. Are there any other questions? We've got a few minutes left here. If anyone wants to type in a question in your control panel question box, I'll give you a minute to think.
One of the questions we frequently get is, how do I choose the type of equipment for the boat launch? The simple question is, how many launches per day do you have at that site? The solar units that we've created can handle about 100 uses per 24-hour period of time. That equates to about 7 hours of continual use. So again, we're trying to scale the equipment to meet the requirements at a site so folks can get the right tool for the right volume of boats, targeting the right species. There are different hand tools we also offer to folks to use that can be helpful to pull out weeds from under your axle. So yeah, I guess those are some other common questions we get.
Great. I guess, Mark, I had a question come to mind. When any sort of maintenance is required on any of your stations, how does that work? Do you have staff who can go out and help deal with it, troubleshoot issues and repair?
This actually relates to that public-private nonprofit partnership. In many instances, we have the local lake association or local nonprofit or other partners associated with that water body take on operation and maintenance of the equipment once a public agency buys them. Again, they'll tell you if something needs to be serviced. And so this way, it is a true partnership. They get data on its use and functionality, and then they crimp on a new tool if that tool is broken, or they the equipment actually can email directly your vendor to pump it out, the porta-john or septic company, but they'll also oversee that if need be. That local group also typically does the winterization of it, which is functionally turning it off and putting a winter cover on it. So usually that's done, to answer your question directly, Belle, it's done by a local partner that takes on operation and maintenance after a public agency isn't invested in it.
Got
So
it.
again, that's really why one of the biggest kumbaya moments we've had with a lot of groups is, hey, this is a great way for us to work together
Mm-hmm.
for a common issue, because the county or municipality may be busy and can't be everywhere, or township, and if a local group can help and also see the outcomes of it and share the success and story behind it, it's always a great thing for people to talk about it.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Mark. It looks like I don't see any other questions. So I think with that, we'll wrap up today's webinar, and thank you again to Mark Apfelbacher with CD3, General Benefit Corporation, for this really fantastic webinar talking about their really successful devices. Again, if you'd like to see this recording after the webinar is finished, if you are not already a NASEMA member or PlayClean Go partner, go to nasema.org to sign up for NASEMA membership or playcleango.org, and you'll get access to this webinar at any time. I'll just also note that Mark will be at our annual conference in Saratoga Springs, New York, this September 29th, September 30th to October 3rd. You can come actually see the unit and talk with Mark and get some more information. So again, thanks everyone for joining us again today. We're going to conclude this webinar, and we hope you will join us again. Thank you so much, Mark.
Great questions, everybody. Thanks for doing everything on AIS prevention. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great rest of the day and week. Take care.